Kenosha, a small Wisconsin town with a big piece of history. As we take it back to the 1850s with the execution of John McCaffrey, we will learn about the trailblazer for abolition of capital punishment.
John McCaffrey was hung on August 21st, 1851, for drowning his wife the prior summer in Kenosha, and was hanging from the rope for approximately 20 minutes before he died. His execution violated the right to no cruel and unusual punishment, which led many citizens feeling responsible for his death and pushed the government into abolishing the death penalty 2 years later. John McCaffrey was born in 1820 in Ireland. Early in the 1940s, John McCaffrey decided to immigrate from Ireland to America to Kenosha, Wisconsin, where he moved into a house with his wife, Bridget McCaffrey, who he would later murder less than 15 years later.
The death penalty has been illegal in Wisconsin since 1853, but prior to that time, and once afterwards, 15 people were executed under state, local, or tribal law. The first of these executions happened on January 15, 1815, when the nephew of Soy Chief Le Corbeau Francois was shot by a British firing squad at Prairie du Chien for murdering 2 traitors. Along with this, on August 20th, 1830, Daniel Hempstead, a soldier, was hung at Green Bay for murdering a boat builder at Duck Creek 3 months earlier. On February 18, 1842, Peter Green, a Native American, was hung at Duck Creek for murdering 3 of his own children 2 weeks earlier.
Green would end up being executed under tribal law. In the 1800s, the most common type of executions were public hangings, with other methods being beheading, firing squad, and electrocution, all of which is argued by many to violate the Eighth Amendment. The Eighth Amendment reads as follows: excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted.
Wisconsin had been a territory for years, and in 1848, Wisconsin became a state. On the day of May 29th, the President of the United States, James K. Polk, signed a bill, making Wisconsin the 30th state of the United States. Just 11 days after the bill declaring Wisconsin a state, an Ojibwe Native American by the name of Little Sauk was executed for murdering 2 fur traders near St. Croix Falls. He was tried and executed by white settlers. It is debated whether it is considered an official Wisconsin execution, because at the time, the area was not officially a Wisconsin county, and some claimed that the area belonged to Minnesota Territory. At the time when Wisconsin became a state, there was no population data, but in 1850, the census in Wisconsin showed a population of 304,000 people residing in Wisconsin. The square mileage of Wisconsin was roughly 56,154 square miles. The first governor of the state of Wisconsin was a Democrat named Nelson Dewey. Dewey was born in Connecticut on December 9, 1813. Dewey entered the politics game in 1833 when he was elected to the Territorial Assembly of Grant County.
Whether Dewey expected it or not, he had a lot on his plate coming to him, especially with what was to come with John McCaffrey.
On Monday night last, the cry of murder was heard at the house of John McCaffrey of this city, which aroused of the neighbors from their beds. On the arrival of the neighbors at the place, they found Mrs. McCaffrey in a hog shed, awfully bruised and cruelly murdered. An inquest was held, and the fact disclosed that her husband, John McCaffrey, threw her into this hog shed, which contained water and mud to the depth of 20 inches or more, and stomped on her body in the hog shed until he killed and murdered her. McCaffrey was arrested and brought before the mayor for examination, after which he was committed to jail to answer at the next term of the circuit court for this county. It was at this trial that in just 10 days the jury came to the verdict, guilty of willful murder, and Judge E.V. Witten announced to the courtroom, "Listen now to the sentence of the court. The sentence of the court is that you, John McCaffrey, be confined a close prisoner in the common jail of this county until the time appointed by the governor of this state by his warrant for your execution, and that at that time You be hung by the neck until you be dead. Judge E.V. Whitten was on the Wisconsin Supreme Court and was the judge of the circuit court that tried John McCaffrey. Governor Nelson Dewey officially signed off on the death warrant of John McCaffrey to be hung and executed on August 21st, 1851 in Kenosha, Wisconsin. On this day, on August 21st, 1851, Nathan R. Allen was ready. He was the sheriff who was going to hang John McCaffrey. As he applied the restraints to John McCaffrey, 2,000 to 3,000 people watched as the restraints were set, a white hood placed over him, and they dropped him with the rope around his neck. He struggled for 5 minutes, and after 8 minutes, the doctors checked his pulse, and it was slightly weaker. He was still alive. It would go on for another 10 to 12 more minutes before he would officially die.
Christopher Latham Scholes was a witness of the botched execution, along with over 2,000 to 3,000 people. Fortunately, this is the same man who would later invent the typewriter. He was also a well-established newspaper journalist. Scholes began to spread the word of the execution through the Kenosha Telegraph, his newspaper. People outside of Kenosha began to hear and also spread the word of the botched execution and started to push for government action. Over time, Scholes found a push when he got a job as a state assemblyman and really started to meet the end goal for the abolition of capital punishment. Nearly 2 years after John McCaffrey's execution, capital punishment was to be abolished on July 10, 1853. After the abolishment of the death penalty in Wisconsin in 1853, it would be 34 years before another state abolished the death penalty. In 1887, Maine would abolish the death penalty, being the second state to fully abolish the death penalty, but fourth ever to abolish it in any way. Michigan made the only capital crime, treason, in 1847, and Rhode Island temporarily abolished the death penalty in 1852. Obviously, Wisconsin being the third state to abolish it.
Currently, 23 states have fully abolished the death penalty, shown in the dark blue, with Wisconsin being the first to do so. There are 21 states who still have the death penalty active today, represented in the red, and finally 6 states have taken a pause on executions, shown in the light blue. In a study done by 2 students at Northwestern University, 76 criminologists were asked the question, do you feel that the death penalty acts as a deterrent to the commitment of murder and that it lowers the murder rate? Out of 76 experts, only 4 said yes, leaving 67 to say no, being the most at 88.2%, and 5 had no opinion. A 2019 poll by Gallup found that a clear majority of voters, 60%, would choose punishment other than the death penalty for murder, as you can see on the pie chart in the orange. No opinion has 4%, and 36% of people voted for the death penalty. Since 1976, the most common execution method by the state government is lethal injection, and some backups, which are shown on the list to the left, include electrocution, gas chambers, hangings, and firing squads. Obviously, you can see that the most common one being lethal injection, with 1,426 people being executed by lethal injection since 1976. Over time, there have been 200 inmates that have been exonerated, which means proven innocent since 1976. The top 3 states being Florida with 30 people, Illinois with 22 people, and Texas with 18 people being exonerated. There have been 333 people executed for interracial murders, 21 times where a white defendant has killed a black victim, and 312 times where a black defendant has killed a white victim. Almost 15 times as many when white defendants kill black victims. As you can see, it is much more common for a black defendant to be executed for killing a white man than a white man for killing a black man.
John McCaffrey was hung on August 21, 1851, for drowning his wife the prior summer in Kenosha, and was hanging from the rope for approximately 20 minutes before he died. His execution violated the right to no cruel and unusual punishment, which led many citizens feeling responsible for his death and pushed the government into abolishing the death penalty 2 years later.